Under my leadership, we will engage constructively with the government. Not opposition for opposition's sake, not scoring party political points or making impossible demands, but with the courage to support where that's the right thing to do.
Hello everyone, welcome back to My Left Eye. Labour leader Kier Starmer gave a less than encouraging performance on Sky News today when pressed on how his party will bring the supposed change from the Tories that the country desperately needs. In an interview with Sophie, he constantly failed to point out why his party would be any better than the current government, as Ridge repeatedly pointed out that Labour's policies are indecipherable from the Conservatives. His shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves also missed an open goal left by Jeremy Hunt in last week's mini-budget by claiming to be prioritising growth and investment but refusing to say where the money would come from and essentially agreeing with Hunt's approach. Reeves has also been criticised recently for following the Tories' credit card analogy of the economy as an excuse not to commit to borrowing and public investment, and for using the words magic money tree to pretend that the Bank of England doesn't exist, despite being a former banker herself, and that phrase being thrown at Labour by the Tories during the run-up to the last general election, or how things have changed for the worse in the party over the last 5 years. So regardless of Starmer's expectations to stroll into government with a huge majority later this year, he's so far failed to show why there's any difference between the shower that we have in office and the neoliberal dumpster fire that Labour have now become. Let's see what's happening.
Last week's budget made it very clear that from next year we're going to see some really savage cuts to public spending. Really savage cuts. And I feel that you haven't really been honest with the British people yet about what you're going to do about that. You know, are you going to tax more, borrow more, or you're going to become, you know, the austerity Prime Minister? What are you going to do?
Let's be honest about what we're going to inherit, because I think it starts there. Because what we learned last week was a terrible indictment on 14 years in power. 14 years of Tory government.
Look, I haven't got long, so I just want to know. We know how bad it is. We know how bad it is.
Sophie Ridge has already had enough of the robotic response there. It's been said that the economy is heading towards a state that it was like at the end of the Second World War, and at that point we still managed to invest in great public services such as the NHS. Let's see if Starmer can explain why he's failing to put similar levels of public spending into his policies.
I want you to be honest with people. What are you going to do? Are you going to become the austerity Prime Minister if you win the election?
It'd be an awful inheritance. If we're privileged enough to come into power, they've damaged the economy, they've damaged our public services, and we have to change that. I ran a public service, so I don't need any...
The Starmer bot there has simply reset. He's only got a certain amount of words that he can use that he's programmed with in interviews when he responds. And now, very similar to the Tories, in fact, identical to the Tories, when he's asked the question again, he just repeats his previous answer. Further evidence that there's nothing between the Labour Party and the Tories under Starmer.
Anybody to tell me how important it is that our public services are properly supported and properly funded. We have to ensure that we've got an economy that is thriving, because at the bottom of all of this is the fact the economy's been stagnant for 14
I know you want to grow
years.
the economy, but that's not going to happen on day one. You know, I want Sheffield Wednesday to win the Premier League. I know it's not going to happen this season. You know.
But there's a lot of things we can do very quickly. The changing the planning regulations and rules can be done very, very quickly.
Councils are going bust.
National Wealth Fund.
Councils are going bust now.
Yes.
There's a 5.5-year, and I know you'll care about this, there's a 5.5-year average wait from a rape being committed to that person seeing justice. What are you going to do straight away if you're in number 10? Be honest. Are you going to borrow more, or are you going to enact austerity?
Well, where we are going to be able to put money into our public services, we've been clear that we'll do that. So when it comes to the NHS, 2 million...
And of course, as soon as any politician says, let me be clear, you know that the next thing that's going to fall out of their mouths is going to be absolute tripe. Starmer's clearly dodging the question on austerity, which he would no doubt continue. In fact, Rachel Reeves said just yesterday that they're not going to be able to turn things around immediately. So any concept of change coming from the Labour Party just isn't so.
Reduction in the waiting lists by the scheme that we've got to work 24/7. With our schools,
I'm not talking about the initial... VAT so we can put more teachers into our schools, £1.7 billion needed. IFS is £20 billion in public services, and you're not being honest about what...
It's just so robotic and so repetitive. The lack of passion, the lack of enthusiasm is just overbearing. You imagine and remember the crowds that Jeremy Corbyn orated in front of in the run-up to the last general election, and his enthusiasm, and the people behind him who shared that enthusiasm, and there was true hope for the country. But now we're stuck with a neoliberal Thatcherite robot in opposition.
What you're going to do? This is your chance. Tell people.
We need to ensure that the economy is growing. We can turn
It's
that
not
around.
going to happen on day one.
Please, just hear me out.
It's
before
not
telling me
it's not.
Planning can be changed very, very quickly. That will have a massive impact on growth. The second thing is our National Wealth Fund, which will bring in private investment. I talk to private investors all of the time, and they say to me, Kier, we've got the money to invest right now in your country, but we're not going to do that because we don't see the stability. We don't see the conditions in which we're going to invest. We intend to turn that around. But I'm not going to shy away from your question. We are going to inherit a really badly damaged economy after...
He already is shying away from the question, and he's just referred to his original answer from the top of the interview as well. Of course the austerity is going to continue. The NHS, for example, is not going to be in safe hands with Wes Streeting. The economy is not going to be in safe hands with Rachel Reeves. It's just going to be more cuts, more austerity, and more suffering for millions of ordinary working people.
Is a failure. Our job is to pick it up, stand it back up, and move our country forward. And I'm not going to shy away from that or provide easy answers to that.
Or not any answers.
We've got to grow our economy. Now, you may say that's not an answer you like.
The answer is borrowing and public investment. It's so obvious, and you're acting as though it doesn't exist. Rachel Reeves, using the credit card analogy, the magic money tree analogy, pretends that the Bank of England doesn't exist. It's there for public borrowing, for investment in public services. You know that. Rachel Reeves knows that. He's taking the British public for fools in this interview. He's either dumb or playing dumb. Obviously, it's the latter in this case, and Kier Starmer knows it.
I say it's the only answer.
It's a long-term answer, but it's not telling me what you're going to do.
Well, I don't think that it is going to take that long to get our economy going. I think we can turn it around very, very quickly. But what I'm not going to do is make the mistake of saying that, or pretending there are easy...
So in the last 90 seconds of the interview, he's gone from saying that things aren't going to happen immediately to saying that they are. Make your mind up, Keith.
Answers, unfunded spending commitments are what Liz Truss installed on the country, and we're all paying the price. Last week you saw in that budget, at the very end, staggeringly, the Chancellor announced £46 billion of an unfunded commitment to get rid of national insurance. We're not going to make that mistake. Because in the end, who pays the price for that? It's working people, and I'm not going to allow that to happen under...
So he's saying things are going to change, but not saying where they're going to happen. He's saying that there's going to be public investment, but not where the money's going to come from. The only thing I've heard recently that has shown where the money might come from came from an interview with Rachel Reeves, and her response to that is unbelievable. Let's remind ourselves of what she had to say.
So what we need is a plan for growth. We need to get people back to work. There are 700,000 more people due to be on sickness benefits, and that, of course, is a huge cost to the economy.
Yes, you heard that right. Rachel Reeves wants sick and disabled people to get out of their beds and mobility scooters and get back to work. She's also been under fire recently for backing Rishi Sunak's attempt to redefine the meaning of the word extremist, and also failing to pledge to invest in social housing and drumming up pledges that go soft on private landlords. But this comes as no surprise considering Kier Starmer, who's an open Zionist, once also said this when asked about his political influences.
Every moment of meaningful change in modern British politics begins with the realisation that politics must act in service of the British people rather than dictating to them. Margaret Thatcher sought to drag Britain out of its stupor by setting loose our natural entrepreneurialism.
So with Labour potentially taking office after the next general election, will things be any better for the country? Will they be any different from the Tories? And will they continue to implement austerity? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Please help to spread the good word by subscribing, hitting the like button and sharing our content around. You can support the channel even more by joining us with one of our membership packages that have lots of perks for you to enjoy starting from just 99p per month, or to make a one-off contribution, please visit our Buy Me a Coffee page. Links are in the description below. Thanks again for watching. My Left Eye will be seeing you soon.